Good afternoon, buenas tardes, and welcome to Generous Futures, Hispanic and Latinx Visibility. My name is Jen Gonzalez, and I am the Executive Director of Student Affairs here at Toronto Metropolitan University. We are very excited about this panel today, and we can't wait to dive into this discussion. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. I believe knowing our own personal story connects deeply to our responsibilities in honoring the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. My Canadian story begins with my parents immigrating from Ecuador to Hamilton, Ontario in 1973, and them doing a really incredible job keeping me connected to the traditions of my ancestors and our family lineage. I continue to learn about the impact of colonialism on the Indigenous peoples of Canada and how connected Turtle Island is. In fact, many of the teachings I've received from my abuelas and tias align deeply with the teachings I've learned from our Indigenous colleagues and community members. As we continue to tell the truth about the impact of colonialism on the land we are on today, I encourage all of us in attendance to reflect and reconcile our own colonial histories so that we may build stronger connections and relations with our Indigenous community. In doing so, I hold space for the vision of experiencing peace, friendship, and respect to be made a reality, starting with our time together today. I am delighted to be moderating this panel in season 3 of the Generous Futures series. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our lead sponsor of the series, TD Bank Group, for helping to advance these important discussions. TD Bank Group has been a great supporter of TMU, and we are delighted that they have joined us on this journey of understanding. Today, we are looking at the barriers Hispanic and Latinx communities face in Canada and beyond. We'll explore how community leaders are addressing these challenges and making meaningful changes to increase visibility and carve out new opportunities, and how nonprofits, educators, and advocates are working towards justice and equity for these communities. I would also like to acknowledge that the term Hispanic has been identified as problematic for members of our community. We are approaching this term and conversation today from the lens that all voices are important, that each of us continue to be on our own unique journeys of decolonization within ourselves, and the Hispanic Latinx community encompasses many people, including but not limited to those who also identify as Black and Indigenous. It is our hope that this conversation illuminates our diverse Hispanic Latinx communities and sparks future conversations within your networks. Today, I will pose questions to the panel. Following this, time permitting, I will ask our panelists to respond to questions you submitted when you registered. I am now delighted to introduce you to our panel of leaders. Mauricio is the director of the Canadian Hispanic Business Association and founder of the 10 Most Influential Hispanic Canadian Awards program. Having arrived in Canada in 1991, today he is an international market consultant with the Government of Ontario. Despite his personal success, professional success, he has never forgotten his Hispanic and Latin American community for the past 20 years, and in his free time, he's been helping this community leave a legacy. Mauricio has helped hundreds of immigrants and recently raised significant funds for Hispanic and Latino students at his alma mater, which is our university. Welcome, Mauricio. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jen, and welcome to everyone in the panel.
Gracias, Mauricio. All right, next, Mexico City native and Torontonian at heart, Berenice Chavez is currently supporting students at Toronto Metropolitan University as a student success navigator. Before that, Berenice managed a Canadian enterprise company's expansion in Mexico City. Berenice holds a bachelor's degree in global management at TMU and is a certified English-Spanish interpreter. I might need you some point, Berenice. Her experience as an international student made her recognize that coming to Canada as an adult poses many challenges, but also many rewarding opportunities. Bienvenida, Berenice.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the panel also to participate, and I look forward to listen to all of you.
And our final panelist, Dr. Ivar Mendez, is the Fred H. Wigmore Professor and Provincial Head of the Department of Surgery at the University of Saskatchewan and Saskatchewan Health Authority. Prior to his arrival in Saskatoon in 2013, he served for many years as chairman and founding member of the Halifax Brain Repair Center and head of the Division of Neurosurgery at Dalhousie University. Dr. Mendez is also the chairman of the Ivar Mendez International Foundation, which is dedicated to providing nutrition, shelter, medical care, and education for children in the Bolivian Andes. He was named one of the 10 most influential Hispanics in Canada by the Canadian Hispanic Business Alliance. Bienvenido, Dr. Mendez.
Gracias, Jen, and thank you very much. It's an honor to participate with all our colleagues in this panel.
Amazing. We have an amazing panel with us today, and we are going to get started. So I would like to get started by asking the same question of all of you. Mauricio, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Berenice and Dr. Mendez. Why is this topic so important to discuss now?
Charities have been around for a long time, and from most religions and geographies. In the Middle Ages, of course, they were created to provide pretty much the same things that we are discussing today, or that are important today: education, health, housing, even prisons. And they exist, and philanthropy exists, and this cause exists because inequalities are existing in the society. Sometimes the governments cannot or don't want to address these needs. And so that leaves to people within the society to tackle those situations. So I think it's important to talk about inequality, to talk about disparities, and also to talk about visibility of different groups, including our own growing Latin Hispanic community in Canada.
Thank you, Mauricio. Let's go to you, Berenice.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Mauricio. I think this topic is very important to discuss today because our society has been going through a transition in awareness of cultural diversity and acceptance today more than ever before. And I believe this applies to all equity-deserving groups. But I truly believe that this conversation is even more important to our own Hispanics and Latinx community in order to identify our strengths, but also at areas of opportunity, use them for the raising or the new opportunities that we have in Canada, so we can also become our own advocates. Thank you.
Amazing. How about your thoughts, Dr. Mendez?
Well, this is a really important and a very timely topic. You know, empowering Hispanic communities to achieve their potential within the Canadian context is crucial. We truly have to identify the barriers, especially for Hispanic youth, that they encounter, and really remove those barriers so they can achieve success as a new generation of Hispanic Canadians. Successful Hispanic communities and individuals will really contribute to the success of Canada as a multicultural nation. We have to provide tools to our communities and individuals and give them opportunities such as education and other opportunities, so Hispanic Canadians can become a true force of creativity, innovation, cultural diversity that may be able to truly contribute to the future of Canada.
Wonderful. And I know all of us have contributed in our own way. And as we look to the future, I think that all three of you made amazing remarks that definitely set up the rest of our conversation. So thank you very much for that. Mauricio, you have been open in discussing the challenges you faced when you first came to Canada. Can you please tell us about the work you are doing to make the path easier for newcomers behind you? Why is this so important to you?
Our community, the Hispanic Latin community, is relatively new to the society here in Canada. In large numbers, we've been in Canada for approximately 60 years. We had 4 waves, and the previous waves were small, significant but small. We are now going into the second, and in some instances, the third generation of our community. And like Dr. Ibar Mendez says, given the tools, if we utilize those tools that are sometimes existing, we can give in great numbers. We didn't come here to this country to ask, we came to give. And we have the opportunity to do that, some people more than others. And so it is important to contribute, to contribute to our society, to mark our history. We have, of course, several issues. We will talk about those later, and some barriers, but we have great opportunities to help the own members of our community. Education is key, so I'm pleased that Toronto Metropolitan University is leading this initiative today.
Thank you, Mauricio. Berenice, you're probably a very recent wave. Can you please tell us about your journey as an international student, how that began? What were some of the supports that helped you or were missing? I think that's an important piece for sure. And what can we collectively do better to support our Hispanic and Latinx communities who are just settling in Canada most recently?
Yes, and thank you. And I always wanted to share actually my experience as an international student, but it's not a question that usually people ask, and I wouldn't say, right? Can I tell you about my international student experience? But this is how it began. It was actually a strong desire to continue experiencing a multicultural environment. My original plan was only to study a few months in Canada, or well, a little bit more than a few months, just to study English, go back home, make the most of the experience, and continue with my life. But between friends from all over the world, especially from Japan, Korea, from Brazil, from Turkey, between international food and something that was very important to me, which was the pluralist views that Canada has in terms of faith. I was able to live my faith without justifying it why I'm a little bit different. The safety that I feel in the country, I thought, okay, I need to stay. I would like to study with these people. I would like to continue experiencing this multicultural life environment. If there is a lot to learn from a little part of the world, it's probably here. So that's how we began. It was very difficult to move from that plan of just studying English to do a post-secondary education. So I received, and I needed a lot of support, especially from my parents, who originally support me with all they could, financial resources, endless phone calls, multiple prayers and crying together. But I needed support here too, and it's where I found my Canadian family here, or my Torontonian family. I received a lot of support from my host mother from Sweden, from her best friend from Quebec, two special brothers from Hong Kong, a landlord, my ex-landlord, a Greek Canadian person, and my now best friend, who doesn't live here, he's in Japan, but I know she's actually watching. All of them gave me a lot of support, and that's how I was able actually to enroll together with my parents, of course. First, it was a 3-year program, and eventually it became multiple certificates, and I was able also to do my degree in Canada. Now, to answer your second part of the question, Jen, the support that I received, I believe the main one was my faith. From the very beginning, it would have been very difficult for me to achieve just anything if I didn't believe in something. Then my parents, of course, well, also my Canadian family, who was a great support for me. And for the last part of your question, what can we do to better support our Hispanic communities? I think we could start by removing some stereotypes that perhaps don't serve us anymore or is actually hurting us. We could create a new mindset, not only of confidence, also of support. I believe also it is crucial, especially for newcomers, to teach tools for daily living, budgeting, planning, financial resources. Moving to another country is literally like starting a new life. You have another life that you brought from your own country, but you need to learn a new system, a new weather, new education system as well, new structure, financial, different financial habits, and the way of living, it becomes so different that we need a lot of support for that. And I believe that that's the reason why we need to help our newcomers by giving them a little bit of education. Like Mauricio mentioned, it is very important, but it's also very important not only to encourage our community, but providing them with all those tools that can make them succeed in society.
Amazing.
Thank you, Jen.
Well, thank you to the what sounds like a multitude of people, a big family of people who supported you for sure. And I hope people out in the audience are listening to, you know, the kindness in all roles. What I just heard there, everything from your landlord to your colleagues, your fellow students, and hopefully some professional members. And we'll talk more about your role later in terms of what you're doing for our current students here. Dr. Mendez, your foundation has done incredible work in Bolivia. We would love to hear more about what inspired you to establish your foundation and serve a community not necessarily here, but back in Bolivia.
Thank you, Jen. You know, I immigrated with my family to Canada when I was a teenager. When I finished university, I had this big desire to explore Bolivia further. And I made a specific plan to systematically explore the country, to travel extensively, to try to understand not only the geography, understand the culture, understand what makes Bolivian tick, in a way to help me understand myself. And through all these travels, I found amazing things, amazing landscapes, the spirit of the people and the culture. But at the same time, I found poverty in many corners of the country. And what really impressed me the most was, of course, that the poverty was more acute in the most vulnerable populations, such as the children. So I made a decision after all this travel to contribute to the children. I felt really deeply that the children were the agents of the future. I felt that to really help Bolivia and these small communities, that really the change will come from within. Although external opportunities are important, it is especially the people of the community. And if the children, if they're given the opportunity to achieve their potential, as we just talked in the first question, they will be able to change their communities. So I concentrated the foundation on children in the very specific areas of the Andes where poverty was the most acute. And I concentrated that work in three areas. The first one, nutrition, because if you do not provide nutrition, the brain does not able to develop. You cannot have, you're hit 2 or 3 times. First of all, that you don't have nutrition, that your brain doesn't develop well to be able to perform the tasks that other children, in more privileged countries have. So nutrition was important to preserve and then to develop those brains. The second part was healthcare to make the children healthy. But the third part was kind of I think an innovation, which was the improving or enhancing the creativity of these children by art. So we had a very important art program that will allow the children to think outside the box, to really be able to be creative and create new things through art. In some of these communities, children had never seen a paper or a watercolor or a color pencil. And so that is what the foundation is doing. We work with 5,000 children, and this is a long-term project. We hope that some of these children that have been given that opportunity will be the leaders of the future and will change their communities. So we're still working on it, and I hope that maybe one of the or two of them will lead the future of those communities and change things for the better.
Incredible work, Dr. Mendez. Thank you for that. That's incredibly inspiring and certainly resonates very deeply with me in terms of within my own family, our investment back to the children, the people who are coming up. And certainly I can share a little bit more about what I've tried to do to make sure that the family members in my community are taken care of. And it sounds like you learned more about yourself as you embarked on that journey, which I think is also super, super important for our community as well. Mauricio, back to you. And this is certainly one that is near and dear to my heart. Why do you think it's important for Hispanic and Latinx community to support access to higher education?
Can I? Am I there?
We're good. No, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. I've been doing community work for 20 years. When I came to Canada, I spoke no English. I had no university education. I was studying dentistry in Colombia, but my family lost everything. So I'm not ashamed to say, for about 2 years, we didn't even eat just rice and potatoes in Colombia because we lost everything we had. I come from middle upper class family, but we lost everything. And when I came to Canada, I had the opportunity, well, not only to clean floors for 3 years, I thought that would be the rest of my life, but then I decided to change myself, and I did it, and I made the promise to help my community when I could. So this is why I do my volunteer work. And so back to your question, why is it important? Because I don't know, I feel that God sees everything, and it is important to give back, particularly when we look at the community hours, which is growing, and it faces high subemployment levels and higher unemployment, more so than any other ethnic community, and in fact, more than the Canadian population at large. So if we have that inequality, then that translates, if you have subemployment, that translates into parents having less time for their kids. Education changed my life. So of course, I think we all agree that education is key to success. And so giving back, we are enabling our community to do better. It is also important because, as an example, like Dr. Ivar Mendez and Berenice at the start, they alluded to healthcare. You should know, and you know likely, that COVID exacerbated this difference. Our community was among the hardest hit on COVID impact, more deaths, more infections, and more difficulty accessing the system in Canada. Like Berenice said, when you come to Canada, it's a new structure. So giving that information to the community is important. It is there, but if they don't know about it, they're not going to be able to access it. Same with education. There are programs, there's financial programs, in fact, some that I have worked in, and you are aware of this, raising funds for our community, but people know that there's money there that they can access. So it is important for those factors, ultimately, because we all came to give to this country.
Mm-hmm. I resonate deeply with my first job ever was helping my mom clean banks in Hamilton, for sure. I was actually pretty tiny. My job was to get the coffee cups behind the garbage cans. So I am always very mindful when I am using my garbage in my current office, for sure, because I think what you're talking about is not always known out in the general Canadian population, that we are underemployed, that sets up cycles of poverty and underemployment and under access for higher ed for our Hispanic and Latinx students. So we greatly appreciated your work to support scholarship funding and for Hispanic and Latinx students at TMU. And I've known deeply some of the students who have gone on to become anchors on CTV News out in Saskatoon. Actually, it's very interesting how all these things connect. And certainly those individual stories lead to and add up to a whole community of success. So thank you, Mauricio, for all your giving. Berenice, you're with us, you work in student affairs, you are supporting students, all students. But certainly I think that one of the reasons that I'm excited to have you on our team is that you have a particular perspective on Latinx students, as we just talked about, who come from lots of equity deserving backgrounds. What role does mentorship and volunteering play in advancing the next generation of Latinx leaders? And what can nonprofits do to encourage more opportunities to build connections within our community?
Yes, thank you, Jen, and thank you, Mauricio, for inspiring us with what you just have said with your story. I believe mentorship, probably Mauricio and Ivar agree with me, is crucial, whether are members of the community are first generation or they are just adult immigrants like I was. And this is because the experience that we have, and at this moment, I will just focus on that adult immigrant experience. We are used to, like I mentioned before, another system, language, structure, rules, a big family of support between friends and family from our countries, and many other factors that have already shaped our behavior and our habits. When we move to another country, like in this case, all these differences feel like we're starting all over again, a new life, but you're an adult starting or being a newborn when you are actually aware that you're living again. So we need that guidance, that mentor or that mentors who show us a new way to live, to integrate, not to abandon who we are or who we were in our previous lives, to call it that way, but just to help us to transfer those skills from our previous lives, use them for a greater good in this new life that we have on, in this new home that we have made for our own. And I believe that one can still rise without mentorship support, but it might be a longer and more painful way to achieve just about anything. Now, in terms of organizations, what they can do to encourage, I believe that usually the needs are about the same. We need a lot of financial resources to establish ourselves in our country, to support our education, either to fund our degrees, our post-secondary education or beyond that. But also I believe we really need a lot of mentorship when it comes to teaching us the structure and the systems of our society. Sometimes I have this ideal dream that if non-for-profits or organizations offer support to different people, they make them sign, this paid forward contract. So, okay, if you benefited for these resources as a newcomer, how about you paid forward as well? So in this way, resources will always be flowing, and we didn't need to depend so much on these organizations that perhaps have limited funds. So this is actually what I truly believe mentorship should be, and the role that organizations should play in this case. Thank you, Jen. Back to you.
It sounds like you're trying to make it better for the people who are coming behind you, and that lots of people can take that approach in terms of their work in the NGO space. And certainly that pay it forward approach is, I think, one that's deeply embedded within our cultural context as well, that makes lots of sense in terms of making it better for generations coming behind us, right? So thank you for that. Dr. Mendez, you are a highly respected clinician, scientist, and researcher. From your perspective, what role does philanthropy play in providing culturally sensitive healthcare, a very important issue for our community?
Thank you, Jen. It's an important question. Maybe I'll just answer a little bit about how philanthropy has been a true key element of innovation in healthcare. There's, this partnership with academic institutions of philanthropy, who has been truly an engine for successful projects. And this partnership that comes from the government, who has to provide healthcare, industry, which is part of the system, and philanthropy. And of course, you can see all the time these medical schools named after philanthropists, because they donate a significant amount of resources. And many great discoveries in healthcare, both in Canada and across the world, have been seeded by philanthropists who are looking at a truly innovation. They really put their resources in innovation. But the second part of your question, which is kind of even more interesting, how does philanthropy promote the delivery of healthcare in a culturally safe environment? And of course, the prime example of that are indigenous communities. Our indigenous communities who live in remote locations, they have the right to receive healthcare in their own language, in their own communities, together, where the family for them, as for us Hispanics, is extremely important, and they want their relations to be with them. And I want to give you an example of what happened in Saskatchewan. And one of the reasons I moved from Halifax to Saskatchewan was precisely to see how can we use technology to provide this culturally safe care to remote populations. Saskatchewan has a large indigenous population. So we have this very specific project that is focused on the providing prenatal ultrasound for prenatal care. And this has been a big problem in the north, in indigenous communities, as there's no ultrasound facilities for technicians. So the mothers, sometimes very young mothers, have to travel to the cities, being put in a hotel and wait for their ultrasound. And some of them will never do that because they don't want to leave their community. So one very generous donor donated the latest space-age technology, which is a robotic arm that can be controlled from a city, in this case Saskatoon, and they can do an ultrasound in a remote communities 1,000 kilometers away. And we were able to start the first robotic ultrasonography program in the world in Saskatchewan. And we have the most experience in the world now, where we have been provided prenatal ultrasonography to pregnant Indigenous women in their own communities. And this was crucial during COVID, when some of the, as Mauricio was mentioning, these vulnerable communities have been the hardest hit by COVID. And so we provided ultrasound. And I was just telling you, Jenna, I just landed from in Toronto a few hours ago from Ethiopia, where we brought that type of experience to Ethiopia, where it's a country of 101 million people that has terrible maternal and newborn mortality. So we're not using a robotic system, but we're using the same type of technology to provide ultrasonography for prenatal care to women during the market day, which is a Saturday. And we thought that this pilot project was going to recruit about 300 women. We were surprised that over a period of 3 months, 3,600 women actually went. It actually empowered the women to look for their prenatal ultrasound because they wanted to know that their babies were healthy. So that's how philanthropy can actually start something and have a global impact. So it is crucial, and I think it's something that we should always take into account.
Thank you for sharing such inspiring work there. And thank you so much for making time. Dr. Mendez is on his way back, but is in layover in Toronto and made time for us today. So I hope that our audience members are just as inspired as I am hearing the contributions back, obviously, to our Canadian Indigenous communities and then globally really supporting women in prenatal care, such an important topic. So thank you so much, Dr. Mendez. We have a lot of time for audience questions. I'm very excited because these questions came directly from our registrants. I am going to go ahead and call on one panelist to address the questions. But if any other panelists would like to jump in and add in, you are more than welcome. So Mauricio, you're up first. One of our first questions from our audience is, why are Latinx communities not an EDI priority for Canadian institutions?
EDI? Sorry, I apologize.
EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So not an EDI priority for Canadian institutions.
Because we're not making enough noise. And as we grow, as our community grows, we have more people, such as the person who posed the question, making us, we as leaders or heads of groups, cognizant of the fact that we need to make even more noise. As we grow, we have more voice, and we have a stronger voice if we back it up with for example, with money that we can put or we can with votes. We need to be more socially responsive and be more involved with the civil society. That's how we affect change. That's how Ryerson's name was changed due to the public uproar on the past, on the previous legacy. We also need to continue to celebrate those changes, those contributions already made. Dr. Ibar runs an international foundation that focuses on Bolivia. There's several others, Drawing Alegría in facial problems in Colombia with kids. Alma Foundation works with indigenous communities in Peru, Bolivia. The Amistad Canada does the same thing in Mexico. So we need to celebrate those contributions. We also need to continue to identify those people that can make the change. For example, you at Ryerson, I mean, that was a question directly alluded to Ryerson. You, Jen, inside, and Berenice inside Ryerson can start exerting some change as well, assisted by people like Dr. Mendez and I, or not. So as we take positions of leadership in the civil society or in organization, wherever we are, we need to utilize those tools that we have. I ran a program called the 10 Most Influential Hispanic Canadians, as you know, Dr. Ibar Mendez being one of the winners, 130 winners, and I use them. I use them. I ask them for money, or I ask them for mentorship, like Berenice perfectly well said. Mentorship is key. So I use them to do all those things. Just last week, I attended an event at the Art Gallery of Ontario with their CEO, and I brought a group of Latin Hispanic people witness of my program, and it's pretty much the same thing, through arts, making some sort of difference. And finally, it is great that we have so many charitable and public charitable organizations, but we have very few private foundations, such as the one that Dr. Mendez runs. So we have more people, we need more people that have the means, whether financial or influence, to direct their causes to particular needs, whether it's in education, like the question was, or in any other sector.
Mm-hmm. So get ready. We're going to make some noise, I think, is what I just heard from that, Mauricio, and whatever Canadian institution we're part of. Dr. Mendez, Berenice, would anyone like to comment? Or we can move on to another question. Okay, we'll move on. So Berenice, I think this one could be very, very compelling to hear your perspective on. As a culture, we are taught that obedience is a very important value. I feel this has caused some decision-making issues, and we may find it hard to get leadership roles when we go abroad. Would you agree? And how can we break paradigms and be empowered in other cultures?
Yes, Jen, although I don't know if my parents would agree whether or not I'm very obedient, but I think I am. And yes, together with obedience, I think another one is excessive gratefulness. Some of us have the syndrome of the inmigrante agradecido, the grateful immigrant, perhaps because we feel that this is something of value and it has been taught through generations, or perhaps because it is the aftermath of our colonial influence. And yes, I believe these two are wonderful qualities as long as they don't make us feel that we are less deserving than other groups, or that we have to conform with roles that are not related to leadership. But we can feel more empowered, I believe, to become better leaders through education. I know that we have mentioned this before, but education has so many forms. In my case, education came from elder adults. They were my key support here in Canada and my guidance. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an institution, or it could be an institution, but education just can be a huge global form of transfer knowledge to another person. Also believe by preparing ourselves, I believe any of us could be great leaders, but we need to prepare to take on leadership roles. And also, I think a good leader should understand its surrounding, the environment, the community, and although it might sound a little bit contradictory, good leaders, or a good way or path through leadership should be by encouraging other groups too, even outside of our own, empowering other groups, making allies, embracing the differences. I believe all that plays a very important role in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Jenny, if I can add to that, Bernice, integration into a new society is an important issue. However, it is as important to be able to have the added value of our Spanish or Latin American inheritance. We bring that inheritance, the way we are, the way we've been brought, our culture, to enrich society. We enrich the fabric of society. And that added value is really important for us as Hispanic, as Latin American leaders, to be recognized as an important contribution to the fabric of society. And that may allow us to not only be more visible, but to also increase the consciousness of our fellow Canadians that we bring this addition to what we do, and that may speak even greater than words. That type of an example of the value of being from Hispanic inheritance or Latin American inheritance.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The image that's coming to mind is actually my abuela's kitchen with a big pot of soup, and no matter who came through the door, everyone got some food, right? And it might have meant that one person got a little less, or maybe you got a little less than you expected. But certainly that obedience in that way is quite good. It means that everyone's getting what they need, and there's an abundance to the leadership that I think we bring to the various roles that we play and have in our society. So thank you very much. Mauricio, I'm going to go back to you. What role do we all play in increasing Hispanic and Latinx visibility? Again, I know I can speak for myself when it took me quite a few years to, first of all, have another Latina identified colleague. It was actually only 6 years ago in my career of over 20 years. So before that, I didn't feel like I could talk about it as much. Perhaps with some safe people, as Berenice said, maybe some other folks who had some other global experience, but I spent a lot of my early years of my career assimilating to the Canadian culture, Canadian workplace, even as a first generation Canadian. So what role do you think we all play in increasing Hispanic and Latinx visibility?
Okay, I think we have to start by being engaged with the society. But I mean, this again, just same answer to the same question. Really, the first thing that we have to do, we have to do a better job is read the local news. Because when you read the local news, you know what's going on, and then you find a way to get involved. To me, I teach my daughter, she's 9 years old. One of the 9 lessons in life that I give her is that don't talk to me about problems, talk to me about solutions. If she comes to me with a problem, I'm just gonna turn her down and say, just go away. When you have the solution, come and talk to me. And we only have solutions when we look at the issues, when we read what's going on. So being engaged, that's one. And being engaged, being informed, and taking action. Taking action means also becoming part of the civil society. And it means voting. And it doesn't mean just voting. It also means being engaged in the local parenting school, at the school board, for example, or in the local community association, identifying issues and running with them. One thing that, and also finding, of course, trying to find different ways to tackle the same problems. One thing that I commend Toronto Metropolitan University is in working with our community in developing the Hispanic Latin Scholarship Fund that we created. And we went through a period of 9 months approximately for Ryerson, the university, to change their internal donor system. They had to change several things. But we were ready. When we rolled it out, we brought your president, Mohamed Lakemi, and in half an hour, we had over $100,000 in half an hour raised. The money is there, the people are there, but the institutions also need to adapt so that we can help better. And working, and particularly that particular project, I believe it was the first time that a university will work with an ethnic group in identifying and creating a scholarship fund for a community. So more of that.
Absolutely. One of the best days of my career, Mauricio, to be in that room when that half hour, $100,000+ came in to support an incredible amount of students, for sure. So thank you for that. I have a question that I think is quite compelling, as we are all from various countries and various identities, various different parts of our own journeys as identifying as Latinx or Hispanic. I have a question here from the audience that I think is really great. How can the Hispanic Latinx community become more engaged with each other? Would anyone like to start?
Can I take a stab at that?
Yes, Mauricio, you can.
First of all, we have to recognize we have to recognize that we come from over 20 countries. We came to Canada at different ages, living for different reasons, whether political or financial, and with different mentalities, whether it's sexual or political affiliations and whatnot. So that utopia that there's going to be only one community and one or group that represents me all, that's an utopia. It doesn't work. It's impossible. We have to start with that. And second, we have to identify issues. And once we identify issues, whether it is you and your friend living in an apartment that the landlord doesn't fix, that's an issue. Then if it comes to the attention of the authorities or the local group, then it starts to create a ball rolling. So learn what's going on and identify the issue, but also recognize that and recognize that there are groups there that can represent you, but not one single group can represent everyone.
Amazing.
Maybe just I'll add something on that. So the choice is not being Hispanic or being Canadian. Those are not incompatible identities. They're actually not only complementary, but they're synergistic. That 1 + 1 is maybe 1,000. That added cultural value that we bring from the different areas where we are actually enhances us in everything we do. And I think Mauricio is right. We need to organize ourselves as a Hispanic community across the country, have a stronger voice, actually collaborate with each other, promote our youth, speak up at different forums, from the political forum to the community forum. We have to assert the idea that we are a community that contributes to the country, and that contribution should be valued and it should be recognized to enhance the community, because enhancing the Hispanic community will, in a logical manner, enhance the Canadian community as a multicultural society. So we need to have that type of organization and will to work together.
Incredible. Couldn't agree more. Berenice, would you like to add?
Yes, thank you for these points of view. And I truly believe that it is very difficult to try to make one community of our many countries from Latin America or Spain or other countries that speak Spanish in other parts of the world. However, when we come to a non-Spanish speaking country, we are identified as one. Whether we as members of the community like it or not, from the outside point of view is we are one, we speak Spanish, we have a lot of similarities between our cultures. And I think because something is outside of us, we cannot start telling people, oh, actually, is there a huge difference between a person from Colombia, like Mauricio, or a person from Mexico, like Berenice? We cannot really start explaining people. And it would be better, perhaps, if we can get together instead of competing, trying to make allies between us. We have the advantage of speaking the same language and sharing very similar stories. I know we come from very different reasons, like Mauricio mentioned, but I think none of those reasons may be foreign to one another. We understand what is happening in these different parts of the world, and just by sharing one story, we can understand why we are here. And at the end of the day, we all share the same goal, that is trying to be the best we can in our second home. Perhaps this is the second home for us. So if we can just move with that simple goal in mind, I think it would be easier to start removing, a little bit some of those differences. One amazing thing for me that always helps me, I try to remove differences with music and food, because sometimes I think there is nothing that can come bad from that person if they can make that kind of food, if they can make that kind of spicy salsa. They must be really strong people. So I try to focus a little bit on that. I'm not saying I'm blind to our differences, but that has helped me at least to trying to overcome that, I don't know, like underground competition. Sometimes it is happening between our communities.
It is very true. May I add one thing? If you ask any other ethnic community, they'll tell you, we say within our community, that community is united. When you ask them, they'll say, no, there's so many other groups and divisions. It's all normal, it happens. And the more divisions, in fact, I argue that is the better, because there's many more interests at play, many more ways to looking at solving a problem or getting some sort of representation. Berenice talked at the very start at something very important, stereotypes, which is timely on her comment that she just made. A few years ago, I led a the first delegation of Hispanics to meet a prime minister with Prime Minister Harper. Dr. Mendez came along with another 9 winners of the program that I ran. That was 10 years ago, I believe. And we met with the prime minister. But we didn't just meet with the prime minister. I made sure that a declaration was spoken publicly in public records about the Hispanic community in front of the 300 and so parliamentaries that were there, the MPs. And I also made sure that we arranged a meeting even with our own ambassadors in Mexico. Why is that? Because we always have to look at that level of visibility and at eliminating all those stereotypes. It was, to me, a major coup to bring Dr. Mendez and a few other people such as himself from different sectors, not just research, global leaders, and to tell a prime minister and 300 MPs, that's our community. We got to do more of that.
Wonderful. I'm hearing synergies. I'm hearing collectively coming together. I'm hearing food and dance, and just making sure that we're trying to find the spaces of connection. I would add celebration, joy, and then also looking for those issues-based ways of creating those systemic opportunities to be visible as well. So thank you for bringing up those examples to all 3 of you. We have come to the end of our discussion. That hour went by fast. I'd like to end this discussion today by forecasting the future. So to all the panelists, from your perspective, what is one thing you'd like to leave our audience with? And I will note now that we have about 250 registrants from all over the world. We have Miami and Japan and many, many people from across Canada. So Mauricio, we'll start with you. What would you like to leave our audience with?
Vote. Doesn't matter which country you're on, vote. And respond to the census at the most basic level detail, so that your voice, your count, your name, your country of origin is there.
Beautiful. Berenice?
Yes, I would like to say thank you for all the support that people are going to receive, or maybe they are receiving already, based on the needs that have already been identified. So I want to thank you, because if this is a global conference, thank you for all the support that you have given to our community. And so you know that also our community is already giving back, or will give back as soon as they can. And my other thing is to my fellow Hispanic and Latinx community. If you came like me as an adult, and you're wondering why 10, 5 years, 20 years have passed, however many years you have been here without feeling progress, don't ever get disappointed about the number of years that have passed. If you make a plan, progress will come. But also, it's very important to understand, and it's something that not only our community struggles with. We believe that because the number of years in this country, in Canada, will be the equivalent of the amount of progress we have achieved within time, but it is not like that. This actually, the way is very difficult when we are new immigrants in this country. So get the help from mentorship and all the support you can. Be patient. Progress will come, but it won't be measured within the number of years we are in this country. And I think it's something that I really encourage everyone to remember.
Very wise, Berenice. Thank you. Dr. Mendez?
Yeah, I'm optimistic about the future of the Hispanic community in Canada. We have been through a very challenging time, pandemic within our society that have been clearly that we may not have expected before. I truly believe that the Hispanic community has a role to play in promoting diversity, in promoting equality and equity and social justice. I think we will be playing that role in the future. So I see the future in a bright manner.
Amazing. I do too. And I thank Mauricio, Berenice, and Dr. Mendez for being a part of this panel and giving us a vision of the future that is very bright. This was a great discussion and certainly has lifted my heart, my corazón. And a huge thank you to our lead sponsor of the Generous Futures Panel Series TD Bank Group. Your leadership is truly commendable. Thank you as well to our promotional partners, the Association of Fundraising Professionals for your Toronto chapter, the Canadian Association of Gift Planners, Canada Helps, Imagine Canada, and Community Foundations of Canada. And I also would really like to thank our audience for joining us today. This is a big deal for us to have a conversation about our community as a part of the Generous Futures curriculum, talking about lots of issues that impact our society. So thank you very much for joining us and taking some time out of your day to hear more from our perspective and to hear our stories. As Berenice said, please expect an email in your inbox that in the coming days that will have a link to this discussion, but also will have lots of resources for you as a community member. You are connected to us now. I put my hand up to be available to anyone who would like more information about the possibilities at TMU for you or any of your family members. And I really highly encourage you to share that link with your network so that this conversation can go as broad and as far as it needs to go. We hope you will join us May 17th for Generous Futures Destigmatizing Mental Health. Details about that webinar will accompany the email you receive in your inbox. So that is it for us today. Gracias a todos. Take care. We hope you have a wonderful Tuesday out there. And thank you again to our panelists for your time, expertise, and wisdom today.